Welcome to the Sports on Tap NEO High School Football Show. Be sure to join the conversation by liking us on Facebook and following us on Twitter at SOT Podcast. Use the hashtag SOT HSF. Here are your hosts, Rob Trump, Josh Jeffy, Ed Dick, and Sean Duffy.
And welcome, everyone, to Sports on Tap. It's our Ohio High School football coverage. Week 8 game recaps here on Mixler. We're live right now in Studio J. I'm Rob Trump. We have Ed Dick, Sean Duffy, Josh Jeffy with you. Later on at 8:30, Joe Itel from joeitel.com is going to be on and talk with us about rankings and kind of how he got started with joeitel.com and how basically high school football relies on, his point system to
at least we do
keep track.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've
been actively stealing from him for about 3 years.
Well, we do give him credit.
We do.
So I guess we're not stealing,
but we heavily rely on his
Yes,
website to make us
absolutely.
sound adequately smart enough to talk about high school football.
Yeah,
And the one guy who's got to be excited to talk to him is probably the only guy here who can really decipher the
Right.
numbers, and that's Ed.
That's Ed.
Oh, Ed crunches numbers in his head. I mean, I'd like to see what goes on in Ed's head when he's crunching these numbers sometimes.
That makes one of us. I don't know what happens half the time that happens.
The smoke, is it like me? Smoke comes out of your ears a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. We're trying to figure out who needs to beat who and all these different scenarios that Joe has, for all intents and purposes, pretty much figured out.
Yep.
With his what a team can get for their minimum if they win out, maximum if they win out. What happens if they lose out, and how you can essentially rule a team out of the playoff hunt mathematically. I mean, I think you could do that. You could do it on paper for the most part, but this is the mathematical way that says, you ain't making the playoffs.
Yeah.
So very, very excited to have him on.
Yeah, and we want to give you our information. If you go on Twitter, we're at SOT Podcast. We're also on Facebook. You can go on YouTube. We archive all of our podcasts on there, so interviews, our game recaps and everything like that on YouTube. We're on Instagram and much, much more. Go to sportsontappodcast.com for all of our stories, videos, pictures. You can go to NEO Sports Insiders for great high school coverage. And there's all kinds of places to get the information from. And you can email us at sportsontappodcast@gmail.com if you have questions or ideas for our show. But without further ado, let's go to Josh Jeffy, who has the Greater Cleveland Conference. And, Josh, there were some fun games over in the Greater Cleveland Conference.
Yeah, it's getting down to the nitty-gritty now. We're talking about playoff positioning and conference championships at this point. We're going to open up this week's recap with the Saturday game. So this past Saturday, Strongsville went ahead and went into Shaker Heights, and it was a good game in the first half. Strongsville was up early in this one, 14-0. Shaker clawed its way back to the point where it was only 21-14 in the third quarter. And then Strongsville, led by Taylor Griffin, went on a 21 consecutive point streak. Taylor Griffin in this game finished with 124 yards, 4 touchdowns. In that third quarter, when Strongsville went ahead, like I said, they went full force on the running game for this one. Shaker Heights tried to get back in this game late. They scored a late touchdown, but it was not enough. Strongsville went ahead again with a 42-28 victory. Strongsville improves to 5-3 on the season, 2-3 in the conference. Shaker Heights actually falls to 5-3, but however they are still 3-2 in the conference. The Medina Bees got back on the winning track with a 51-7 victory over Elyria in this one. Medina scored 3 touchdowns and a safety within the first 7 minutes of this game. Medina quarterback Ryan Fisher had an outstanding game, 21 of 38, 269 yards, 2 interceptions, but 4 touchdowns. And Medina offense ran a total of 61 plays on offense in this game. The only score for Elyria was by quarterback Dalen Charlo. he had a touchdown reception to Jameel Nolan. Charlo in this game went 10 for 26, 151 yards, and his one touchdown. Medina improves to 3-5. They get their first victory in the conference. Elyria still winless on the year, 0-8, 0-5 in the conference. Euclid traveled to Brunswick and put the whooping down, 42-7 on the Blue Devils. Panthers were up 21-0 at half. They had touchdowns by Andre Tillman, Brandon White, and Armand Weaver. In the second half of this game, 2 rushing touchdowns and a passing and a receiving touchdown in this one. Elyria, Euclid, goes on to a 42-7 victory. Ed, the only touchdown for Brunswick went to
running back, Robert Woznicki. He scored in the fourth quarter. Euclid admittedly had their they had their second string in. But it was good for our offense to get a little bit of flow going and get some points on the board, get us into the area there. So overall, tough game. Same issues we've been having all year. Unfortunately, we've been turning the ball over on offense. This one was a direct score. They had a fumble return for a touchdown to start the game
by Andre Tillman,
and there were a couple of plays like that we saw in the Browns game yesterday. There's been a lot of comparisons between what we've had going on in the Browns for that and on their Sunday games, but there's a couple plays where Phillip Rivers seemingly just threw the ball up in a triple coverage and they got the ball. That happened a couple of times to us. There were guys just made plays, and unfortunately we weren't in a position to do so. So, 2 more winnable games, as Josh will. I'll say winnable just relatively speaking, but 2 rivalry games, which Josh will speak to here shortly. But we'll hopefully get back on the winning track.
Yeah, and, Brunswick losing to Euclid. Euclid, just last week shut out Solon 21-0.
They're a very good team.
So
They're
it's
very, very good.
It's nothing to be ashamed of. They're obviously the top team, one of the top teams in the GCC. Euclid improves to 7-1 on the season, 5-0 in the conference. Brunswick drops to 1-7. They are 1-4 in the conference. Now, the game of the week in the GCC, Solon comes away with a 29-28 victory over the Menor Cardinals in overtime. Scoring started in the first quarter with Menor. Luke Floria with a 4-yard TD run. Solon quickly answered back on a 53-yard touchdown run by Trayvon Raphael. Rain became a factor in this game. It was only 7-7 at halftime, but the passing game virtually got eliminated in the second half. This game ended 21-21 in regulation, and Menor scored on their first OT possession to make it 28-21. Then Solon answered back, a 6-yard touchdown run by running back Jeff Barnett. Then they took the gamble. Nick Close caught the 2-point conversion attempt from Pat McQuaid, and that ended the game 29-28. Solon with the victory over Menor. A huge victory. In all respect, a huge upset. The way that Menor was playing, everyone thought, they were well on their way. To go undefeated in the conference and in the season. But Solon came out, especially coming off of a shutout loss last week, came out, had a great game plan, and they came away with a victory. Now, the running backs were the story in this game. As I mentioned, passing was virtually eliminated in the second half due to rain. So for Menor, running back Brian Trobel, 209 yards on 35 carries, 2 touchdowns. Luke Floria added 11 carries with 66 yards and 2 touchdowns for Solon. Khalil Eichelberger, 11 carries, only 24 yards but a touchdown. And Trayvon Raphael had 10 carries, 64 yards and a touchdown. Just an all-around great game for both teams, but just a little bit better for Solon. Solon improves to 7-1. They are 4-1 in the conference. Menor drops to 7-1, and they are 4-1 in the conference. So, if you're looking at the top 4 in the GCC, you have Euclid, first place. They are undefeated in the conference. Solon and Menor are second and third, and in the conference, according to conference records, Shaker Heights is still 4th in that one. So a lot of still moving parts left to be had as we look towards the schedule next week, this coming week. Shaker will travel to Solon. Ed mentioned a rivalry game, 1 of 2 for the Blue Devils as they host their neighbor to the south, the Medina Bees. Strongsville will travel to Elyria, and a big game. Menor will travel to Euclid in this one. In terms of Joe Itel, real quick, in Division I, Region 1, there are 4 teams in the GCC that would make the playoffs if they were to start today, according to Joe Itel. Menor is 1, still 1 in the region. Euclid is number 3, Solon number 4, Strongsville 8, Medina 12, Shaker 13, Brunswick rounds out Division I, Region 1 at 18. In Division I, Region 2, Elyria rounds out the bottom there at number 17. So, guys, pretty big win by Solon. That's a huge win, actually, for that program. So you basically have your top 3 teams that we've been talking about all year, and they're kind of duking it out here at the end. Strongsville's got some winnable games, their last 2 of the year. So don't know how those victories will help them really in the playoff hunt. They just have to hope there's some teams ahead of them that lose, but they are in the hunt as well. So interesting stuff happening.
If I'm Strongsville, I think I want the teams behind me to lose, like Massillon Jackson and Cleveland Heights, and even Berea Mid Park, because as you said, Josh, there's only one win between Elyria and the Week 10 opponent Brunswick, and there's not going to be a whole lot of level 2 points available for Strongsville. Not as much as available for Massillon Jackson, at currently seated 9 in Division 1, Region 1. They do have a very good game against Hoover in Week 10, a 6-win team right there that can help propel them to a higher spot. And then Cleveland Heights, I'll be honest with you, I don't think this is quite likely, but they have an 8-0 Maple Heights team in Week 10 who will most likely be 9-0 in that last game. So Maple Heights is destroying everybody, and I don't know if the Cleveland Heights will be able to stop them. So right now, Strongsville takes care of business. They're looking like they can sneak into that 8 seed and possibly have a rematch with either Menor, Euclid, or Solon in the upper echelon there.
And real quick, my player of the week for the GCC is going to go to Strongsville running back Taylor Griffin. He had 4 touchdowns, 124 yards, a very workman-like performance against a pretty solid Shaker Heights team. That was an important win for Strongsville. They needed to get it, and they relied on their workhorse, and they did. So congratulations to Taylor Griffin, the GCC player of the week.
Yeah, congratulations to him and Solon, the Comets. You know, what a bounce-back performance playing a tough Menor team. And, you know, they lost to Euclid 21-0. They get blanked, but then they bounce back and play very good versus Menor. So very impressive win, Solon on the road, getting that win there.
I'm certainly impressed with the call in overtime because that's
a gutsy
high
call.
risk, high reward, and you know, I guess when you're playing Menor and that's your rival and you're playing to win that, you play to win that game, as Herm Edwards once famously
said. You're that
said.
close. It's like, you know what, let's go for it. I mean, give him credit there.
You know, and that's one of those things where if it works, you're a genius. If it doesn't, you're a goat. And he came out, you know, that Solon's coach came out on the right side of things, and they were able to execute. And that was the big thing. They were able to execute that 2-point conversion, and, you know, that's saying something about that Solon team. They wanted that win.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I probably wouldn't have really been on them too much. I mean, the way Menor's playing, they've been dominating teams. So, you know, if you're that close, it's almost like you just got to go for it.
Yeah, if you have a shot, you got to take it. And, and that was the perfect opportunity to do so. I mean, if you don't want to extend the game longer against. I want to see a superior team in Menor, but if you have a shot to take them out, you got to give it. You have to take it, and they did, and they succeeded.
Yeah, great job by the Comets. Great job, Josh. Now we'll head over to the Southwestern Conference, our Week 8 game recap. We'll start at Avon Lake, where the Berea Mid-Park Titans traveled to Avon Lake, and this was a battle of offenses. Unfortunately, though, the weather did play a factor in this one, slowing down the high-powered passing offense for the Titans. Because before the rain, it was an offensive showdown with both teams. First, Trevor Baczynski hit John Lyons for a 16-yard touchdown on the opening drive, but Avon Lake senior quarterback Jack Miklish answered with a 14-yard touchdown pass of his own to Luke Fetters. It was a 7-7 tie in this game that went back and forth. In the second half, though, the rain did play a factor as not much scoring happened, and at one point it was 21-21 late into the third quarter. Avon Lake, though, they scored the last 4 touchdowns in this game to win big in a huge SWC conference game. And also Avon Lake, they do stay undefeated in this one, 49-21. Berea Mid-Park, they were hurt by turnovers in the second half, a fumble and 2 interceptions in this game. Really took their sails out from them. Their Avon Lake running back Connor Riggs helped the Shoremen get the win. He ran for 208 yards and 3 touchdowns. For Berea Mid-Park, Trevor Bazinski, the quarterback, he threw for 218 yards and had a touchdown. Did throw 3 interceptions in the game. And for Avon Lake, they improved to 8-0, 7-0 in conference. They'll travel to a very tough place to win, Olmsted Falls, as Berea Mid-Park, they fall to 5-3, 5-2, and will host North Olmsted coming up. Avon, they traveled to North Ridgeville, and these two teams always play very tough, but Avon, they welcome back their running back, Nick Parasak, who had a high ankle sprain in Week 2, but was back for this game versus the Rangers, and he played an absolute huge part in this game as the Eagles, they took the opening kick and drove 69 yards on 9 plays, with Parasak setting all of it for the final 27 yards. Avon was up 14-0 in the first quarter before North Ridgeville got on the board with Cade Riley on a 4-yard run. It was 14-7 Avon, but that's when Avon's running back Nick Parasak, he scored 3 of the next 4 touchdowns for the Eagles, who jumped out to a 35-7 halftime lead. Parasak finished with 14 rushes for 186 yards and 4 touchdowns, and then 2 catches for 51 yards in his first game back. Avon wins big, 56-21, and they continue to make that playoff push as they improve to 7-1, 6-1 in conference. And next up for them, they will travel to a tough place to play in Amherst. And North Ridgeville, they fall to 2-6, 2-5 as they travel to Westlake. Next up, Westlake traveling to Lakewood. And Lakewood, they were trying to still get their first win, hosting the Demons here. And Westlake, they'd score first on a 26-yard touchdown pass from Jacob May to Kevin Walls with 8:30 remaining in the first quarter. But then Lakewood would have an answer as they marched 71 yards on 13 plays and capped it by a 2-yard touchdown run by DJ Jackson, who scored a touchdown with 5:36 remaining. The extra point, though, was no good, so 7-6 Demons. And at halftime, the Rangers did lead 21-14 when Lakewood quarterback Albert Wilhelmy hit Milan Jackson to go up 28-14 in this game. Westlake, though, would answer but missed the extra point. It was 28-20 Rangers. And in the end, Lakewood, they led 35-26 in the game with Westlake trying to come back. But it was the Rangers' defense with a big interception to hold off the Demons. And Lakewood gets their first win of the season.
All right.
As Lakewood wins 35-26. They improved. Actually, they get their first win. Now they go to 1-7, 1-6 in conference. Their next game is versus Midview, as they'll take on a good Middies team who they only have 1 win as well. But you know what? They're a pretty tough team. And they've been pretty competitive here so far this season. Westlake, they fall to 1-7, 1-6 in conference, and they will host North Ridgeville. So congratulations to Lakewood in getting their first win against Westlake here on the season. And still 2 games left here as Midview, they traveled to Olmsted Falls. In Olmsted Falls, they used a 3-headed monster running the football in this game. As the game started with both teams scoring early on, the trio for the Bulldogs was keeping the hot hand. It was Teddy Grzycki, the quarterback for Olmsted Falls. He had an 18-yard score to regain the lead. It was 13-7 in this game. Olmsted Falls led. Then Andrew Gooch, the quarterback for Midview, he responded with a Middies touchdown scoring from 5 yards out. It was 14-13 Midview in the second quarter. It was close early on, but the Bulldogs, they always seem to find an answer, and they scored on a kick return after the Middies score, going 99 yards. The Bulldogs would score again after the defense held the Middies. It was 25-14. And in the second half, Jack Spelsey again would continue to score 3 more times, with Josh Andrews providing another touchdown for the Bulldogs in the second half. For Midview, though, it was Andrew Gooch who would run a score and throw a 79-yard touchdown pass to Sanders for the Middies' second half touchdowns. But the Bulldogs, they did pull away and get an all-around really good win for them. 62-27, Olmsted Falls gets a big win over the Middies. Olmsted Falls improves to 6-2, 5-2 in conference, and will host the undefeated Shoremen of Avon Lake as the Middies, they fall to 1-7, 1-6, and will host Lakewood next. Andrew Gooch, he completed 31 of 47 passes for the Middies, throwing for 308 yards and 2 passing touchdowns and also a rushing touchdown. He also did rush the ball 8 times for 26 yards. For Homestead Falls, Jack Spelsey again, he rushed 13 times and had 126 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Michael Howard, the other running back, he had 101 yards and a touchdown on the evening. Amherst traveling to North Olmsted, and both teams are coming off tough losses, and who would bounce back? That's going to be the key in this game and get back in the win column. And it was Darren Anders. He was a tough guy to stop in this one. He had 81-yard touchdown run early in the game. And North Olmsted, they had the lead late. But the Comets, they relied on Eric Henderson to kick a 45-yard field goal with 1:24 left, and he did make it to tie the game at 17. But then Amherst, they had trouble stopping Anders in the game as North Olmsted, they would get the ball back. And it was a 6-yard touchdown run by Darren Anders that broke a tie with 6 seconds left. And that lifted the Eagles past Amherst in this game. The North Olmsted Eagles win 23-17. And for Darren Anders, it was his 13th touchdown on the season. Kenny Scagliazzo for Amherst had 2 touchdowns, which gives him 20 touchdowns on the season. Amherst loses another close game, and they fall to 5-3, 4-3. They're right now currently ranked 8th, according to Joe Eitel. North Olmsted, they improved to 4-4, 3-4 in conference, and they still have some hope making the playoffs. They're ranked right behind Amherst at number 9, according to Joe Eitel, who we'll talk to here after the Suburban League roundup. And unbelievable that Amherst has had some close games, and they come off a game where they could have almost take down undefeated Avon Lake. They fell a little bit short, and they fall short here against North Olmsted. Again, 23-17. North Olmsted with a win. My player of the week in the Southwestern Conference is going to Avon running back Nick Persek, who in his first game back had 186 yards on the ground, 51 yards receiving to go along with 4 touchdowns.
Couldn't give it to somebody from Lakewood? First victory?
I know, I should have.
I know,
but you know
come
what?
on.
I didn't have stats there's no stats for that game, so I had no
So
clue.
give it to the Lakewood
So give it to their
team.
whole team.
Yeah.
I could have done that.
That's great, getting your first victory. We had Cleveland, Cuyahoga Falls earlier this year get their first
true.
victory. Now we have Lakewood getting their first victory. That's good. That's what we need.
And it's great to see them.
Browns getting their
get a
first
win.
victory this year.
Well, they did have a win last year. But, hey, the Browns are up to 2. So,
Yeah, right.
But, yeah, congratulations to Lakewood. They could be our team of the week.
There you go.
We'll do that for them. Great win for them getting their first win. And congratulations to Nick Persek in his first game back having a great game. So when we come back, we'll step away right now. We'll take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to go into the Suburban League with Ed and Sean, as there's a lot of great games to get to there. And we also have Joe Eitel coming up, where we'll go over our conferences and the rankings and all kinds of things that will lead up to points and where teams might stand in the end of the season here. Push towards the playoffs. All right, we'll step away, take a short break. We're Sports on Tap. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. Are you a business? Want to be featured on Sports on Tap? Get in front of different age groups in the local community. Contact us at sportsontappodcast@gmail.com for more information. RRT Productions, specializing in creating sports recruiting videos for all high school athletes. Want to play at the next level? Promote your talents with a video to send colleges. Affordable, experienced, and a high-quality video. Make us your local video production company. Visit our website, rrt-productions.com, and contact us today. RRT Productions, we shoot, we edit, you win.
No matter the season, it's always the right time for Z's Cream of Bean. Whether you want to warm up with some of their delicious soups, chilies, or coffees, or sample from their delicious selection of ice cream, shakes, and other cool treats, Z's Cream of Bean has you covered. Visit them at 2706 Boston Road in Hinckley, Ohio, and tell them the guys at Sports on Tap sent you.
For the best coverage of Cavs, Indians, and Browns, check out NEOSportsInsiders.com. NEOSportsInsiders.com brings you breaking news, opinions, and video from all things related to your favorite Cleveland sports teams. Like us on Facebook and follow at NEO Sports Insiders on Twitter for live updates from all the games. NEOSportsInsiders.com, bringing you the best in Northeast Ohio sports coverage.
Welcome back to Sports on Tap. It's our Ohio High School football coverage, Week 8 game recap. I'm Rob Trout. We have Ed Dick, Sean Duffy, Josh Jeffy here live from Studio J. And you can follow us at SOT Podcast on Twitter. We're on Facebook. And we archive all of our shows on YouTube so you can hear any interviews in our week game recaps on there. Go to sportsontappodcast.com for more information on these conferences and other high school information. So we have a lot going on. We're also on Instagram as well. So check us out and get involved with the show. And if you have any ideas, sportsontappodcast@gmail.com. But without further ado, let's go over to Ed Dick, who has the National Division in the Suburban League. And Ed, a lot to go over there in the Suburban League.
Yeah, the National League is starting to come more into focus. We have two teams right now marching towards a possible playoff home game. We'll start with those two teams. First, we'll go to Twinsburg, where the Tigers, coming into this game, 4-3 overall, 3-1 in the Suburban League National Division, hosted the undefeated Wadsworth Grizzlies. The Grizzlies played this game without leading Medina County wide receiver Carson Risher, but their defense was up to the task, limiting the Tigers' offense early and providing the Grizzlies with great field position. Grizzlies running backs Brock Snowball and Dom Laparo turned out the ground yards, combining for over 140 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half, helping steamroll the Tigers for a 41-0 victory. The defense pitched a shutout led by senior Jake Herbert's 2 interceptions, which he now holds the school record with 8 interceptions in a season. It was their second shutout in the last 3 games. Wadsworth improves to 8-0 overall, 5-0 in the conference. Right now, they hold down the number 2 seed in Division II, Region 7. They do control their own destiny, according to JoeItel.com, and they are in primo spot to host a playoff game out there at Art Wright Field, where we had the pleasure to go last year to see their playoff game against Sylvania Southview. Next week, they will take on Brecksville Broadview Heights in Week 9. Twinsburg is even at 4-4 overall. They are 3-2 in the conference. They're going to travel to Hudson next week. Right now, they are at 11 in Division II, Region 5, just outside the playoff picture there. Macedonia, Nordonia, one loss on the season. They travel to Cuyahoga Falls to take on the 1-6 and 1-3 Black Tigers. The Knights jumped out to a quick 27-0 lead at half, and they rolled over the Black Tigers 48-12. Knights quarterback Robbie Levac threw 4 touchdowns. Julius Jones caught 2 of those touchdowns and then also returned an interception for a touchdown for 3 total scores for the Knights. Black Tigers quarterback Ty Vassilotti returned this week. He did rush for a touchdown and threw a 4-yard touchdown pass to Eric Rosiak. With the win, Nordonia moves to 7-1 overall, 4-1 in the conference. Right now, they are the 4th seed in Division II, Region 5. They will host North Royalton in Week 9. Cuyahoga Falls is the complete opposite. They are 1-7 overall, 1-4 in the conference. They are going to travel to a very tough Stowe Monroe Falls in Week 9. Nordonia, right now, they do control their own destiny, Division II, Region 5. They are in a battle right now for the 4th seed with Warren G. Harding and Garfield Heights. So they have some work to do there to clinch a playoff spot and a possible home game for Nordonia. Stowe Monroe Falls, 2 wins on the year. They traveled to Hudson for a battle with a 3-4 overall, 3-1 in the conference. The Explorers, it was a stalemate after the first half of 14. Stowe's Bryce Shepard scored from 13 and 1 yard out, but that was countered by a 20-yard touchdown pass from Liam Brennan to Luke McLaughlin and a 1-yard touchdown run by running back Brady Ludwig. Hudson then took control in the third with a safety and a second touchdown pass between Brennan and McLaughlin, this one covering also 20 yards out. The Bulldogs, though, they own the fourth quarter. Bryce Shepard rushed for 2 more touchdowns, one from 1 yard out and another from 26 yards out. The Bulldogs come back for a 27-23 victory over the Explorers. Very exciting game out there. Both teams are now 3-5 overall, 3-2 in the conference. They are both ranked 14th in their respective regions. Stowe Monroe Falls is in Division I, Region 1, whereas Hudson is in Division II, Region 5. Stowe will host Cuyahoga Falls next week. Hudson will host Twinsburg. Our last game, and arguably the best game of the week, the Battle of the Golden Shoe took us to North Royalton, where the 2-5 overall, 0-4 in the conference Bears matched up against the Brecksville Broadview Heights Bees. The Bears and the Bees put on a show. They went back and forth with big games by Bears quarterback Joey Marisek and Bees running back Garrett Kubitz. The Bears took a lead going into the fourth quarter, but the Bees kept coming back. They tied the game with just under 2 minutes left into the game with a 12-yard rushing touchdown by Ethan Hatcher and then a 2-point conversion by Kubitz. Marisek quickly countered with a touchdown to put the Bears up 42-35. Kubitz rushed for his 5th touchdown of the night, a 31-yard jaunt. Unlike Solon, though, they were not able to convert the 2-point conversion, and the Bears escape with a 42-41 victory over the Brecksville Broadview Heights.
Bees!
Bears quarterback Joey Marisek scored 3 touchdowns overall. Bears running back Garrett Kubitz, he rushed for 5 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. He scored 32 points in this game to lead the Bees. Unfortunately, there was not enough. Brecksville Broadview Heights remains winless, 0-8 overall, 0-5 in the conference, and it doesn't get much better for them. They will host Wadsworth in Week 9.
Oh, boy.
North Royalton improves to 3-5 overall, 1-4 in the conference. They get their first win in the National Division. Doesn't get much better for them either. They will travel to Macedonia, Nordonia to take on the Knights. My player of the week, even though it was a losing effort, it does not go unnoticed. Brecksville Broadview Heights running back Garrett Kubitz rushed for 5 touchdowns and a pivotal 2-point conversion to lead the Bees into a very, very tough atmosphere and almost stealing a win from North Royalton. The week before, they took Macedonia and Nordonia to the limit as well. So they're playing their best ball of the season right now, and I don't want to say Wadsworth has anything to be worried about because they will take every game. They'll take every game very seriously, but this might be a very surprising game coming up in Week 9 between Wadsworth and the Brecksville Broadview Heights Bees.
Bees. Sorry, I didn't know you were done.
So
Hey, he did the Suburban League National recap.
Oh, okay.
He did that recap.
Okay, great.
So currently, right now, as far as conference standings are concerned, Wadsworth is in the lead of 5-0 overall, followed by Nordonia 4-1 in the conference. We have a three-way tie for third between Twinsburg, Hudson, and Still Monroe Falls. They are all 3-2. North Warrenton and Cuyahoga Falls each have one victory. Brecksville, Broadview Heights at Bees. They are 0-5 in the conference. Right now, Wadsworth and Nordonia control their own destiny. They have a chance to make the playoffs. A very good chance to make the playoffs. Twinsburg is going to need a little bit of help. Same with Hudson and Stowe Monroe Falls. It's not looking too good. Quite honestly, it's not looking too good for those programs there. Unfortunately for Twinsburg, Hudson, and Stowe Monroe Falls, their non-conference schedules, they were not able to take care of too much business in the non-conference season, and it's coming back to get them right now. So we'll see how the rest of the conference shakes out. But right now, Wadsworth and Nordonia are your top two teams, both in the conference and going into their respective playoffs.
Yeah, Ed, you mentioned that game against Brecksville, Wadsworth. I see that going one of two ways. Brecksville not having a victory on the year, and the last 2 weeks have come very, very close. It's going to be on the coaches to make sure their team is up. For young players, especially high school kids, that can be very disheartening. And looking at a Wadsworth team that's 8-0 on the season, playing very tough, they're well on their way to the playoffs. We'll see. It can either go, yeah, they're going to compete, they're going to play hard, and they're going to make it competitive, or it can go the opposite way. So I'm going to be interested to see how that game plays out.
The other game I'm interested in too is North Royalton and Nordonia. Because Nordonia had all they can handle with Brecksville a couple weeks ago, and
31-29.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be. I think this is going to be a shootout between North Royalton and Nordonia. Most teams have been trying to take Joey Marisek out of the game just by running the ball and consistently pounding the ball, but Nordonia has shown some cracks in the. They have shown some cracks in the armor a little bit. Even though they beat Stowe Monroe Falls, they gave up 42 points. They beat Brecksville, they gave up 29. North Royalton, even though their record doesn't show it, they've played very tough all year, and they've been able to put points on the board. So this is a very, very good game that I'm interested in seeing. North Royalton has a chance to not only knock Nordonia out of the conference discussion, but also put a severe dent in their home playoff hopes.
Yeah, and it looks like North Royalton hasn't scored less than 21 points all year. And they've had several close games. I mean, you look at Highland, Stowe, Twinsburg, Hudson, they lose by 10. Wadsworth obviously was the big game. They lose by 26. But, I mean, overall, a lot of close games there that could have went either way.
I think that's a team, too, next year. That's a team you need to watch. I mentioned it a little bit earlier this year. Marisek started as a sophomore last year, and they did graduate a lot of talent with Jake Franchik, Zach Antonio, and Miles Sternad. But they've replenished them with some very good athletes. Sammy Antonio, Zach's brother, sophomore running back. I think they're going to make a big leap with Marisek as a senior next year, and that'll be the. We'll see if they're able to make that same leap that Nordonia made this year. All right, we will kick it over to the Suburban League American Division with my cohort, my compadre, my colleague, Sean Duffy with the American Division.
Thank you, Ed. Always appreciated. Great job on the National Division. We're going to start off with a very intriguing matchup. We have Aurora and Revere, and coming into this in Division 3, Region 9, before this game played out, Revere was just above Aurora. I believe they were sitting at 8th, and Aurora was at 9. And Aurora is coming off two very, very tough losses to Barberton and Highland, respectively. So they were looking to get back on track, and they got back on track thanks to a 27-10 victory at Revere. And the key to this game was the second half performance of Colin McNamara. He led the way on the ground from the quarterback position, accounting for all 3 touchdowns for Aurora in the second half. The only touchdown Revere was able to score was on a 54-yard pass from Nathan Klanowski. Unfortunately, that was not enough to propel the Revere Minutemen to victory here. Aurora now improves to 5-3 and 3-2 in the conference. Now, with this win, they catapult themselves up to currently sitting 7th in Division III, Region 9. They travel to take on Copley in Week 9, and then they have a very good opportunity for points in Week 10 against Mifflin. Revere, unfortunately, fell down to 13th in Division III Region 9. They traveled to take on Bay, which could really help them in the points category. However, I'm wondering, Ed, if it's not enough, if it's just enough to get them, if they were to win out, if they still may be on the outside looking in this particular division. Again, their win out is 24.7. It may come down to, if Aurora falls to Mifflin, that may be the deciding factor. So Revere's got to take care of business and look at the scoreboard, whereas Aurora just has to continue to take care of business, and I think the schedule shakes out for them. We're going to move on from that game to Talmadge traveling into Barberton, and Barberton remains unbeaten as they dominate visiting Talmadge in Week 8, 42-21. Barberton's running back Kyrie Young had 280 yards and 4 touchdowns on the night, and adding to that, Magic quarterback Chase Haywood had 2 passing touchdowns to kick in as well. Talmadge QB Sam Seeker did have 3 touchdowns on the night, but it just wasn't enough to combat that Magic's offensive attack. Barberton is now 6-0. They are 5-0 in conference. They currently sit 3rd in Division II Region 7. They travel to take on Roosevelt. Talmadge, unfortunately, now sits 16th in Division 3 Region 9. They host Highland next week in Week 9, which may serve as a trap game for Highland, as I'll get to that later on in my breakdown. Our lone non-conference game was not a close contest, unfortunately. Roosevelt traveled to Crestview, and they were dominated from the beginning of this game on. They ended up losing 42-22. Roosevelt pretty much out of this game from the beginning. There's not a lot of information on this. I don't think there's a lot of publicity here for this game as Crestview took care of business. Roosevelt is now 2-6 and 0-4. They are currently 13th in Division II Region 5. They host Barberton in Week 9. Now, as I mentioned, Highland looking to continue their winning streak here on the season, coming in, hosting Copley, and, it was an impressive win here. They were able to drop 55-7 drubbing of Copley in Week 8. And again, it goes back to running back Jake Rogers, who rushed for 227 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jack McGinty also contributing with a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. Copley just never got into this game. They didn't score until late in the fourth quarter, and at that point, I believe the Hornets had in their backups. They had a running clock for the second half of this game. It was pretty much over. But the Hornets continue to impress, and they're marching towards a possible showdown with Barberton, not only for a playoff contention, because as you can see, Highland is 7-1. They're 5-0. They sit 9th in Division II Region 7, and they travel to take on Talmadge in Week 9. But that's the interesting thing to me in this division is that Highland, with a 7-1 record, is still on the outside looking in. They need that win against Barberton to really have a shot at even making the playoffs in this division. They have an opportunity against Talmadge next week, but again, as I mentioned, that could be a trap game because you may see them looking ahead to play Barberton because, Barberton's a tough foe and right now, and I don't think anybody wants to play them. On Copley's side, they fall to 2-6. They are 0-4. They currently sit 18th in Division II Region 5. They host Aurora in Week 9. My player of the week for this week, I got to give it to Jake Rogers. I mean, I flipped a coin between Kyrie Young and Jake Rogers, and it came up Jake Rogers. So congratulations, 227 yards in the night, 4 touchdowns. I mean, the guy is literally carrying the Hornets on his back every game. And I guess there's no secret. If you could stop Jake Rogers, then Jack McGinty is going to have to beat you. He's shown the ability to do that. He was my player of the week 2 weeks ago, or I believe last week. And he had a really great game, but unfortunately, it's tough to do that. Jake Rogers is. You give him the ball, and he's got an opportunity to take it to the house. So it's very impressive what Highland's doing, and I'm very interested to see if everybody holds serve in Week 9. We're setting up for a conference or division championship match between Highland and Barberton.
Yeah, I mean,
Excuse me.
You're not kidding there. I mean, Jake Rogers is the I'll say it right now. He's the player of the year in Medina County.
He's
and
gotta be.
And it's
has
not
to
even.
be, yeah.
It's not even close. There's literally nobody I can think of that can come close to it. Maybe Carson Risher from Wadsworth, but for what he means
stats versus stats, it's tough to make that comparison.
You can't make that comparison.
And he's broken several Medina County records, right? I mean, just this year alone in return yards and return touchdowns and yards from scrimmage, touchdowns overall. I mean, the kid is good, and he's a threat. He's one of those guys where you don't want to kick it to him, but if you kick it to him, you got to watch out.
Yep.
And even when they hand the ball to him, and they know they're getting the ball, Highlands offensive, which struggled in the beginning of the year. Admittedly, they were not on the same page, but when they started clicking, and they really did, as we're getting towards the meat of the season here and towards the championship rounds, as they so to speak, Highlands there. But again, Barberton waits in the wings, and Barberton I don't think has really struggled with anybody this year. They've been putting up numbers that the running back Kyrie Young is a man amongst boys. We saw him live, Rob. We saw that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks like I was told he was a sophomore. I could have swore he was a senior because he's built like that. But yeah, I'm very interested to see if both these teams can take care of business in Week 9 and set up a fantastic Week 10 championship matchup. Again, my player of the week, congratulations, Jake Rogers. Taking nothing away from Kyrie Young. Unfortunately, you just didn't get the coin flip there because either one of those guys could be player of the week. Going to go ahead and do the Buckeye recap real quick. Rob doing the Buckeye recap. The Buckeye recap. We follow a team called the Buckeye Bucks. We're going to do their recap, so just letting you know.
I hope all the people out there get that one.
I hope they do too, because what I have to say about Buckeye is probably what I've been saying about Highland and Barberton at this point. Buckeye is on a roll, and they crushed Fireland in Week 8, 50-12.
Wow.
It wasn't even close. I mean, Buckeye jumped out to an early lead and never looked back. They had 5 people enter the end zone. 5 different people.
Wow.
And I'm looking at this. Jacob Durgee had a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. Armando Nye, running back, he finished with 114 yards. He had the most yards of the night. He had 2 touchdowns. Dominic Monaco had a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. And John Buckley had a rushing touchdown for the Bucks. And then there was a fumble recovery for a touchdown as well. So, I mean, we're looking at a Buckeye team that's really hitting its stride. And from all accounts, they are burning their way out of the Patriot Athletic Conference at this point. No one's been able to run with them. They're 3-0 in the Stars division in the Patriot Athletic Conference. They're 7-1. They're 4th in Division III, Region 9. I believe they control their own destiny. No, they don't. They don't control their own destiny. But I mean, I would think another win, and that Joe Itel would have to agree that they're pretty much locked into the playoff spot going forward. But we'll see there. Again, I mean, I don't expect them to lose. They take on Keystone in Week 9, and Keystone currently sits at 4-4, and then there's a 1-7 Brookside. So, again, you want to see the Keystone victory. That's at home, or the Keystone game is at home, and then Brookside's on the road. So there's a possibility there. I mean, anything can happen when you play football, but if everything holds true, I would imagine Buckeye is hosting yet another playoff game and see if they can get off the schneid there. But congratulations to Coach Dennison and that team, as they are, after an early struggle at Revere. And again, Revere's a good team.
And that was in Week 1.
That was in Week 1.
So.
They have just demolished teams that they played.
And Columbia was a really close game too, but they were able to pull that one off. So.
Yeah.
You don't want to sleep on Keystone. They've won 4 straight games, and they have their biggest win right now is what most people would consider an upset against Black River. Black River is traditionally right behind Buckeye as far as this conference is concerned. But they've scored 47, 46, 46, 54 points in the last 4 games. So Buckeye. Coach Dennison is gonna have them ready to roll.
Mm-hmm.
They're not gonna look past Keystone because they know they can't. Keystone's looking for their 5th straight win, and Buckeyes will be looking for their 8th straight win.
8th straight win, yeah.
So we got 2 straights going up against each other. It's gonna be a great game out there at Edwin Stein Gas Field.
And it's gonna be interesting to see how Buckeye shakes out. Their seeding, I think, at least. I don't. Again, I'm not into the numbers as much, but I imagine even a loss at Keystone probably doesn't kill them for playoffs. But it may decide whether or not they're on the road for sure. against in the first week, and they haven't done well at home in the first week of the playoffs over the last few years. So who knows? But I agree with you, Ed. I mean, I'm looking at Keystone as well as a possible game that out if everything, I wanted to qualify that by saying if everything holds serve, I think Buckeyes looking at another year where they're hosting a playoff game. And again, Keystone and Brookside, those two teams can play spoiler for the Buckeye Bucks if they're not careful, if they're reading their own press clippings and not taking care of business. So, definitely interesting things to go on here. I'm still very impressed with, there's a lot of teams in the American division, at least on my end, that still have a shot at the playoffs. Revere, Aurora, Barberton, and Highland. Some other teams, like you said, Copley, Talmadge, and Roosevelt are kind of, if they're not mathematically eliminated, they probably will be in the either next week or obviously the week after. But they've had good seasons. I mean, that's the issue. That's the one thing I like about the American division is the parity. No team is without a win. Every team has got some wins this year, has played tough, and have had some games that got away from them. So I mean, it's not to say that there's a lot more parity in the American division and even in the national division. I mean, the Suburban League's a fun league to cover because it spans such a nice swath of Northeast Ohio public schools, and it allows really competitive matchups week in and week out. You could conceivably go to the Suburban League every week for a game of the week that has playoff standings going forward. So, definitely fun time right now in high school football because there's a lot of what if this, what if that, and then as Ed said, the picture becomes a lot clearer after next week and certainly after Week 10.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on in the Suburban League, and there's still 2 weeks to go, so anything can happen. I think it's going to be interesting to hear Joe Eitel's thoughts on the Suburban League and what teams, could potentially sneak into the playoffs and maybe what teams will be on the outside looking in, and really all of our conferences. So great job, guys. I thought you did a great job. And, Ed, do you want to say one last thing here?
We didn't speak too much to what's going on in your conference from a playoff perspective, Rob. Right now you have we have two teams that are probably in. I think we can pencil. We're almost right in pen that Avon and Avon Lake are going to be in.
Yep.
In speaking similar to what happens in our conference, in that our conference they beat each other up, and that's especially in my division right now where you have two teams that are going to probably make the playoffs. The other 6 aren't. And I think I attribute that more to the non-conference, the non-success of the non-conference that my teams have had. Whereas your teams, they're beating each other. I mean, and then it is a true definition of a grind in the Southwestern Conference. There's a lot of landmines you have to navigate through, and it's very, very tough to do so when every team is capable of beating each other. So and the byproduct of that is unfortunately a situation where in your conference you may only get out of a 10-team conference you may only get 2 teams in, and that doesn't do it justice to how good that conference is, but that also tells you these 2 teams must be good if they get out of the conference, if they can make the playoffs out of the Southwestern Conference.
That's true, and I mean Amherst is at 8 and North Olmsted's at 9. So
Olmsted Falls is at 10.
Yeah, so I mean, and Olmsted Falls has a big game coming up at Avon Lake, so there could be a lot of points there.
Yep.
So we'll have to.
We could conceivably see an SWC a share of an SWC championship not make the playoffs if Olmsted Falls beats Avon Lake, and because they lost to Avon and they beat North Olmsted. Olmsted Falls, I mean, I would hope they would make the playoffs, but it's very possible that only those 3 teams make it in. But I would definitely say that it's a kudos to your league, to the Southwestern Conference, that we're at week 9 and nothing is really settled between spots 6 down.
Yeah.
6, 7, and 8 are all still up for grabs, and they're tight. And it's going to come down to scoreboard watching. It's going to come down to beating the teams. But this may be a situation where we could see a part of an SWC championship not make the playoffs, which would be weird.
Indeed. So quickly, one last thing to recap before we get on with Joe here. Fayetteville Perry, they suffer their 3rd loss of the season, a 47-28 loss to Williamsburg. They dropped to 3-5 overall on the year. They are mathematically eliminated according to Mr. Eitel. I understand. I did speak with Coach Finch over the weekend. I believe they're Chase Jester, their monster running back, ended up getting hurt this game. So that's a big loss to them for a team that's already that small. They can't afford that. So next week they will go into battle with 3-5 Blanchester.
And my alma mater, the Vandalia Butler Aviators, currently sit at 5-3, and they are sitting 5th in the Division III Region 12. They don't, as of yet, have the designation of controlling their own destiny, but if they win that, they're coming off a great win against the team that I would say, if you beat that team, it's a good season against Piqua.
Yeah, we gave that update last week for
you. Did. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, they are 5-3. They take on Sydney this week, and hopefully, if they get a win there, I think you could pencil them in as a team that controls their own destiny, maybe clinch a spot. Who knows? But yeah, those are some congratulations, Coach Puckett. That's a great season. His first season as Vandalia Butler head coach, fresh off of defense coordinator at Centerville.
Very nice. Well, great job, guys. Appreciate those updates. And we'll step away. We'll take a short break. When we come back, Joe Itel joins us from joeitel.com to go over all the rankings, points, and who's looking toward the playoffs. All coming up. We're Sports on Tap. Are you a business? Want to be featured on Sports on Tap? Get in front of different age groups in the local community. Contact us at sportsontappodcast@gmail.com for more information. RRT Productions, specializing in creating sports recruiting videos for all high school athletes. Want to play at the next level? Promote your talents with a video to send colleges. Affordable, experienced, and a high-quality video. Make us your local video production company. Visit our website, rrt-productions.com, and contact us today. RRT Productions, we shoot, we edit, you win.
No matter the season, it's always the right time for Z's Cream of Bean. Whether you want to warm up with some of their delicious soups, chilies, or coffees, or sample from their delicious selection of ice cream, shakes, and other cool treats, Z's Cream of Bean has you covered. Visit them at 2706 Boston Road in Hinckley, Ohio, and tell them the guys at Sports on Tap sent you.
For the best coverage of Cavs, Indians, and Browns, check out NEOSportsInsiders.com. NEOSportsInsiders.com brings you breaking news, opinions, and video from all things related to your favorite Cleveland sports teams. Like us on Facebook and follow at NEOSportsInsiders on Twitter for live updates from all the games. NEOSportsInsiders.com, bringing you the best in Northeast Ohio sports coverage.
Listen to our shows live on Mixer or join us the first Monday of every month at Z's Cream and Bean, located at 2706 Boston Road in Hinckley. Want to listen to past shows? Go to our YouTube page or website, www.sportsontappodcast.com.
SportsOnTapPodcast.com, the place to go where you can listen to past shows, read featured articles, check out all of our social media updates, plus much, much more. SportsOnTapPodcast.com, the official website of Sports on Tap.
For up-to-the-minute info on local high school sports action, including photos, videos, and live updates, be sure to follow Sports on Tap on Twitter, Instagram, and like us on Facebook.
Welcome back to Sports on Tap. This is Ed Dick alongside my cohort, my compadre, my colleague from the American Division, from the
two for
Suburban League.
today.
Word.
Sean Duffy. We have Josh Jeffy and Rob Troutman here.
Yeah, they're here too.
Down here live in Studio J, wrapping up our Week 8 coverage of the Suburban League, the Greater Cleveland Conference, and the Southwestern Conference. We've gone over the scores, we've gone over the conference standings, and we have gone over potential playoff scenarios, the potential playoff, where things stand for all of our teams and where they are, where they're positioned and where they could end up. And our next guest is no stranger to setting this up for everybody. This is a gentleman who's had this website going for over almost 20 years. We use it. I'm pretty sure most others, either podcasts, news outlets, or everyone else uses it uses it to do their high school recaps. We are on the phone with none other than Joe Eitel from joeitel.com. He's live with us. Joe, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining the show.
I'm doing great. How are you guys tonight?
We are doing fantastic. This is Ed Dick here. We're very happy to have you on our show. We're getting into Week 8 here, and your website as its season goes on just continues to evolve, and now we're starting to see the potential playoff scenarios set up, and we started from Week 1 and we followed all the way through. So it's just, we wanted to start off by asking you first, how did 20 years ago when this thing first started, how did you go about getting into this and setting this all up?
Well, it's a interesting story, I guess. When I went to college, I got into computer programming, and once I graduated, I kind of needed something to work on to kind of, tone my skills a little bit. And I had always been interested in the football rankings for the playoffs in Ohio, and so that kind of became the the project of choice, I guess. And I just went to work on it and got all the formulas and schedules and collected everything and kind of went from there.
I mean, how much time does that take, to come up with all these formulas and just really figure out a good concept for this, because the Ohio High School does, playoff rankings and things like that, but you really came up with, like you said, the formulas with the points and everything that really everyone relies on now.
Well, right. So the basic formula is exactly what the OHSA uses. That's how they determine the playoffs. And then what I did is I basically just expanded that to give kind of the best case and worst case scenarios, the maximums and minimums, which again is kind of the same formula, just expanded out with assuming a team will win all of its games or lose all of its games, and kind of getting those ranges. So once you have the base formula from the OHSAA, how to get the level 1 points, the level 2 points, and average it out. The rest of it kind of flowed naturally.
We're talking with Joe Idle, as he is here from joeidle.com, and want to thank him for coming on tonight. And we've relied on your website a lot. When we've done our show, it's been so accurate. And a lot of our listeners, when we go on location, I know they say they love when we start getting into the playoffs and how accurate the points are, and if they're in, if they're out. Have you heard a lot of the same? Have you had a lot of people tell you how they love the website and how accurate, and kind of, they almost know before the season's over kind of who's in and who's out, I think, and it's been pretty helpful that way.
Yeah, especially a lot of coaches will, send me emails and, thank me for putting the time in. So it helps them out, I think, kind of getting to know where their own teams are going to end up. Of course, I think most of them have their own person on staff who's kind of calculating the points as well, but it's a good double check. And some other folks have sent me emails over the years, just thanking me for everything I've done. But for me, it's kind of fun. I just like to put it out there, and I'm glad that people are able to use it and get some good entertainment out of it with the accuracy.
Joe, this is Sean Duffy, and one of the things I love about your site is that it is not only the algorithms and the kind of the way you can read the tea leaves, so to speak, probably going, at least for me, from week 6 on, is just the way you're able to break down the information that you get. And what impresses me the most is I have not even counted how many high school football games go into a Friday night or a Saturday. Did you? My big question for you to start off here would be, in the beginning, how difficult was it compositing all that data so that you could? Were you just reading every newspaper, or did you have to contact the Ohio High School Athletic Association and pay them extra money to get the information? Or because I'm looking at you have it all the way down to Division 7, and that's a lot of teams, from Division 1 all the way down there, and I'm in awe of the amount of data that you're getting on a weekly basis and able to run it through that particular formula or algorithm, however you want to call it. Do you find it now, obviously maybe it's a little streamlined given the way technology is, but in the beginning, was it, kind of a labor intensive effort?
Well, you're exactly right there. In the beginning, it was, it's about counting the out-of-state games that I also need to track for the second level points. It's about, I'd say, roughly 400 games or so per week. And,
wow.
The majority of those are on Friday nights, of course, and then a few stragglers on Saturdays or Thursday nights. So, yeah, when I first started it, it would take me the better part of the weekend to get all the scores. I'd usually have to wait till Saturday morning. Newspapers or the newspaper websites would update their local scores. I always try to get the scores as local as possible because they're a little more accurate in that regard. When you get the local journalists and sports writers that cover their teams and, would know whether the scores are right or wrong. So yeah, in the beginning, that's how I kind of did it. Mostly with newspapers, radio stations, websites, and things like that, message boards to pick up a few scores here and there. And, I'd have things done usually by Saturday afternoon for the Friday games. And then, Saturday night games weren't too bad to get the same night, but some of those slipped into Sunday morning. But now these days with advances in social media and things like Twitter and people at the games giving live updates, I can get most of the Friday night scores. Usually they start trickling in about 9 o'clock to the finals. I can usually get all those keyed into the system by about 12:30 a.m. So it's down to about 3.5 hours, which is a significant reduction in the amount of time it takes me. And then Saturdays, I kind of I'm able to get most of the games in as they go final. There's usually 3 or 4 games going on at a time, and usually tune one in on the live stream and watch one on Twitter or something like that, and try to get those scores in as soon as I can.
Hey, Joe, this is Josh Sheffy. Looking at your website, you do have the disclaimer on there that these rankings are for informational purposes only. Over the course of almost 20 years doing this, I'm wondering if you put that disclaimer on at the very beginning, or have there been issues in the past where some issues have arised when you're doing this, that led to you making mistakes, or having coaches getting mad at you. So basically, just wondering if over the course of 20 years, have you had any major mistakes that almost made you stop doing this?
No, I haven't really.
That sounds like a guy who's solid in his math.
The formulas are solid, right? They don't change.
Right.
The formula hasn't changed since they introduced the level 2 divisor, and that was probably in the mid '90s. So the formula is not changing. The only issue would be kind of the data collection, and occasionally you pick up a score where they've reported the wrong team winning, and occasionally I'm going so fast that I just type in the wrong score by mistake.
It happens.
So it happens. It does. 400 scores a night. It happens. So the good thing is, since I try to update the site multiple times per night on a Friday night, and so if I do something like that, with the number of eyes that are on the website, I usually hear about it pretty quickly, and I'm able to get it fixed pretty quickly. So, usually a wrong score is up for no more than 15 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on how fast the folks report it back to me. But yeah, the main reason for the disclaimer is really because exactly that, because I'm entering scores as I go. There's bound to be a mistake every now and then. I can't recall any huge ones like in week 9 or 10 recently where a wrong score caused a team to get marked as a clinched playoff spot, and when they really hadn't. I haven't had anything like that. That would be kind of bad. I think I did have that happen to me the first year when I wasn't necessarily using local scores, and that's kind of where I learned that lesson, to start using local scores.
Yeah. A team celebrating. Hey, I thought we made the playoffs according to JoelIdle.com. It says we clinched, but they really didn't clinch.
Right. So the other thing that happens, and it happened a couple years ago, is after all the scores are in it on Friday, and then on the Saturday morning of week 10, there was a forfeit that came out, which kind of threw gum in the works of everything. So, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at there. It's, even though it says you clinched one day, you never know if there's a forfeit or something. It might kind of change the position of teams the next day.
Yeah, you got a very nice separate page outlined that says important notes about the playoff feature, and it definitely and it outlines all those different scenarios that that could happen that are obviously out of your control, and things that may not come to light until after the fact. One of the things that I've that I've noticed over the last few years is there are, as rare as it happens, there are two teams at a point that can have the same average despite their level 1 and level 2 points. So sometimes it goes to a level 3 as sort of a tiebreaker. Could you describe the level 3 divisor a little bit?
So, so I guess first off, so the level 1 is the points you earn when you defeat a team, and the level 2 is the points you earn when a team you defeated wins a game. So then the next level, then the level 3 is, I guess, one more step after that is the teams that you defeated and they defeated a team, and then that team defeats a team is basically kind of what that is.
Wow.
So it's if when you figure you can play 10 games, your opponents play 10 games, and their opponents play 10 games, then you potentially have up to 1,000 games being counted there in the level 3 average.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of number crunching going on there.
Yeah, and like you said, it's so rare I don't even display that unless it comes up. Then I'll go kind of figure it out as needed.
Do the playoff statuses like in your system? Do those pop up on your website automatically, or do you have to manually input that information into your data set?
So all those are based on the minimum and maximum points. So it's all automated now. My Friday night basically consists of typing in the scores and pushing a button, and that will do all the calculations and to create all the files and upload them.
Well, I'm glad it's a little easier for you, because even typing in 400 scores and then just hitting a button to have them go through is still a little bit of work. But I'm glad it doesn't take your whole weekend up, and it only takes a few hours at least now. It gets easier as you keep doing it, I'm sure.
Right.
But, yeah, it's really interesting, and, we've had a lot of fun using it. According to our conferences, we've covered the Greater Cleveland Conference, the Southwestern Conference, and the Suburban League, along with Buckeye. And, when you look at the Greater Cleveland Conference, teams like Menor, Euclid, and Solon are right there at the top. They're in the top 4 right there, and then Ignatius at 5. But then when you go down to 8, you have a team like Strongsville, and they play a team like Brunswick and Elyria that doesn't have many wins in the end. So obviously they need to win those, but looking at the teams below them, obviously they need those teams probably not to win too many games. What do you think about Strongsville's likelihood in making the playoffs? If they win out, are they going to need a little help there to stay at that 8th spot?
Yes, it looks like they're definitely going to need a little bit of help there. Like you said, their upcoming opponents aren't going to generate a lot of points for them. And a team like Jackson there or Cleveland Heights even could kind of jump ahead of them with wins in their Week 10 games, which would both be worth points. Even Berea could jump up if they finish 7-3. They could jump ahead of Strongsville pretty easily. So yes, Strongsville would probably need each of those 3 teams, as well as Shaker. It looks like Shaker also has the potential if they can pull off some big wins against Solon and Euclid. They'll definitely need some teams to lose, but those teams have some pretty tough games, so it may not be out of the question.
Joe, one of the questions is Sean again. I cover the Suburban League American Division, and one of the teams that really stands out to me is a team like Medina Highland. Currently, they're sitting at 7-1, but right now they're ranked in the 9th position in Division 2, Region 7. The question I have is they're set up to play Barberton in the final week, and if they're able to get past Talmadge, and is that Barberton game the make or break game for them to get into the playoffs? I mean, if they lose that game, will they need a lot of help to get into an A spot, or is it just kind of the end of that? The end of that game is either the end of the season or the beginning of the season there.
Right. So this region is one of the more entertaining ones, I think, coming down the stretch, because if you look down there, all the teams that are 7-1, 6-2, all the way down to like number 15 spot. It's a lot of teams there with good records. So yeah, Highland, I think it looks like they're probably going to have to knock off Barberton there. I don't know if they'd be able to kind of edge into the top 8 there if they lose that Week 10 game. But again, with all these other teams in the mix, they all, just clicking through it here quickly, they all seem to have at least one game that could go either way, potentially, based on records. I'm not going to pretend to have a crystal ball to predict all the games. But
oh, come on.
I don't want to get any coaches mad at me by picking one or the other. But
you'll let us
but
do
yeah,
the prognosticating.
It looks like I'm sorry.
You'll let us look into our crystal ball.
Right, exactly. I'll let you guys handle your predictions of your local teams there. You probably see them every weekend. So.
That's right.
Joe, we discussed tonight, kind of the difference between, most of the conferences that, 2 out of the 3 conferences that we cover have a decent non-conference schedule where the Southwestern Conference, they have one non-conference game and then they go right into conference play. In your opinion, does that help them or hurt them when it comes to getting those points? Because basically when you're playing most of the season in conference, you're beating each other up. Where you're playing non-conference games, you have the ability to play better teams that could potentially, if you beat them, provide you with a lot of points. And in this case, the Southwestern Conference, they play 9 conference games. Do you think that can actually hurt them in retrospect?
Well, that's an interesting question. It can kind of go either way. So you're right that they playing 9 conference games are beating up on each other, but at the same time, you're guaranteeing that someone's going to win, 50% of the games in week 2 and 3. Whereas if you're playing, say, 3 non-league games, maybe the conference as a whole wins more than 50% of those. Maybe they don't. So it's kind of hard to say whether it helps them or hurts them without knowing what they might have done instead. But if you look at, especially at Region 6, you got Avon Lake, and Amherst, they're in the top 8, and North Olmsted Falls, they're right, also 9 and 10. So you've got, 5 teams there in the top 10. So that's actually, I think, pretty good for that, for having them play 9 conference games. And I think that happened a year or 2 ago also, where they had 4 or 5 of the top 8 from the Southwestern Conference. So it works both ways. So because you're guaranteeing yourself points by having all those games, but you're right. If you could have played non-league games against good teams, then that may have been better. But what it seems like more often than not, when you have too many non-league games, you end up getting stuck with a 0-10 or 1-9 team, and then it ends up hurting you anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking with Joe Idle of joeidle.com. This is Ed again. And to back your point up, I work with the Suburban League National Division, and that exact scenario with the non-conference, the 3 non-conference games that most of those teams play, that's playing out exactly as it is. 2 teams in Wadsworth in Division II Region 7 and Nordonia in Division II Region 5. They've been able to take care of business in the non-conference schedule, and they've also been successful within their conference. But you have like a log jam with Twinsburg, Hudson, and Stowe Munroe Falls that are winning in the conference, but their non-conference season did not go so well for them, and that's where you're able to see, a team like Twinsburg who's 4-4. Unfortunately, those 4 wins aren't against the teams that they played in the non-conference that can get them more points because, and this is something that maybe that we've had to explain to people that listen to us and people that I talk to as a coach for Brunswick High School. It doesn't matter if you lose to a good team or you lose to a bad team. You get no points regardless of who you lose to. But the wins are the ones that the wins are what matter, and your site further illustrates that.
Yeah, that's right.
So my next question is just from an outsider, from your view, I'll go back to my senior season was in 2001 when your website first started getting rolling here, and this is when you see a game like Brunswick-Stronsville, where back then we were both we ended up both being 9-1 once Stronsville beat us. Whilst Jesuit beat Stronsville, they ended up with 3 wins. But those 3 wins were really good wins, and they ended up getting into the playoffs with a 3-6 record. I know you're the numbers guy, but what is it when you see something like that? Like, what do you think about that when you see something like that, and when you see a 10-0 team that may not make the playoffs because they didn't play enough good games?
Well, right. So, first off, the 10-0 scenario hasn't happened for quite a while especially since they've expanded to the 7 divisions. All the 10-0 teams have been safe, although some of them, had to go on the road first round, so they weren't always that safe, I guess. But to your question about having a team that is 3-6, but the 3 wins are against teams that won a lot of games. It's kind of interesting because the record doesn't look very good, but they did win some big games that were worth a lot of points in the system. Whereas a team with 6 or 7 wins probably ended up having 1 or 2 teams that were 0-10 and 1-9, and those are honestly worth almost nothing in the system, in the playoff system.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well go out and play somebody. Of course, you don't always know how what the record is going to end up when you're scheduling a couple of years in advance. But
yeah,
that's really the trouble with it. But yeah, I mean, my thoughts on a team that goes 3-6 with 3 big wins, and they happen to have enough to get in the top 8 was the 6 losses they could have replaced those with cupcakes and had a better record if it would have looked better, but it wouldn't have really changed anything. They would have gotten a few more points and maybe even a higher seed. So I don't know. Sometimes you'd like to see teams that have a good season record-wise getting in, but at the same time, sometimes there are teams that play a lot of tough teams and they'll win a few and lose a few close ones, and it's kind of hard to judge that. But I guess that's what the system is doing objectively, assigning those points based on wins by you and your defeated opponents, and sometimes it just works out that way.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, but that's what happens, and the numbers favor them. So what are you going to do? But guys, any last questions for Joe? Joe, we really appreciate you taking time and coming on tonight, and it was great talking to you. We use your site a lot, and we tell everyone, use joeidle.com because you do an absolute great job, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and we definitely know about that. So we appreciate you coming on, and Ed has one more thing here.
So how much longer you plan on doing this? And once you decide that you're good, does it leave with you, or do you have something in place to continue this?
Well, I haven't really thought about that too much, so I guess that means I'll probably be doing it for a little while longer.
Excellent.
Yeah, I've actually been trying to get some of the older scores as well. One of my goals is to kind of piece together some of the older seasons and get those online as well.
Oh, cool.
So I'm kind of doing that during the off season, and so yeah, I don't think I'll stop this anytime soon until that's complete. Or I'm trying to go back at least to the 70s for the first phase and then see how it goes.
Wow.
But just kind of recreate all the regions since the playoffs started in I guess it was 1972, and I thought, well, 1970 is when they went to the 3-class system, so I might as well round it off to a nice even 1970. So there's still some work to do there, but yeah, I don't anticipate hanging up anytime soon. But when I do, yeah, I guess I would hate to see it kind of leave with me, so I'd probably figure out a way to kind of pass that on, or maybe make the database and all the past scores kind of available for everyone, and so someone could pick it up and go. But I think that's quite a ways off.
Yeah, we have a guy in Sports on
Yeah.
Tap that loves crunching numbers here.
God. Jesus.
No, Joe, we really appreciate coming on. That's great information, and we just really appreciate you coming on and talking with us a little high school football and a little bit about, the playoffs looking forward and the numbers and everything on your site. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, thanks, guys, for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, that's Joe Idle from joeidle.com. Want to thank him for coming on.
Yeah, it was really, really good stuff. Like we mentioned when we were talking to him multiple times, that we use his stuff all the time. There's many people, many coaches that use his stuff all the time, and to actually get to actually hear the voice behind the numbers, it was good, and you can hear how far he's come, the hard work that he's put in. He still puts hard work in, but now it's nice for him. He just puts the scores in, and the numbers run, and he's done a good job, and he's very accurate.
Yeah, I mean, but back when we were all in school, you had to wait till Tuesday morning when the Plain Dealer got released, or your local paper, to see where you stood in the playoff picture. You may be 6-1.
Yeah, you had to wait for the school, the OHSAA.
You may think, we're sitting pretty good, and then you find out, we're 6th in the region, or back in the playoffs didn't expand to 14 or to 8 teams per region until 1999. So even when we were growing up, trying to figure out, hey, is Brunswick going to make the playoffs this year, or is Vandalia going to make the playoffs this year? We had to find out. We had to wait every Tuesday, and without really having a full understanding of who needed to beat who and and everything that we just talked about.
I'm trying to rack my brain. Did the OSHAA release weekly rankings, or didn't they start doing that around week 4? Like I'm trying to go back.
You're right. Week 4 they did.
Yeah, so you didn't even know where you stood until almost halfway through the season.
I remember looking at the Sun newspapers. And the Medina Gazette. They had the points in there, the computer rankings.
And even Joe says on his website that when OHSAA rankings come out week 4, it kind of clarifies things. A lot of that, and he says it's for informational purposes. So whatever he's telling us, the points is just his math, and it's been spot on going forward. So I mean, it's hats off to him. The sheer data that he has to go through, especially in the beginning, and having to crunch all that. I mean, once you get it all into a program to run the math, I think it's easy. But just collecting it had been so labor intensive. Like you said, it would take a whole weekend. Now it takes him till 12:30, and then he finishes up on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, and he's done. And he still has a weekend. So I imagine whatever his weekends open up a little bit more than they did 20 years ago.
It's definitely a labor of love, or to this point, he's been doing it for over 20 years. He mentioned it started off as like a project for him out of college, and this thing has really turned into a major resource for coaches, for high schools, for talk shows, for newspapers, podcasts. It's turned into. I'm not sure if he knew that it was going to turn into what it was when he first started doing this.
And with the amount of print media that is no longer out there, this is serving even more of an informational base for even shows like us that and shows that are upper, more mainstream, Varsity Chalk Talk, just to name one of many. So it's very much an informative base that we all follow, and it's awesome.
Yeah, talking to him a little bit off the air too, he said there could be some interesting scenarios moving forward. So maybe we'll try and get him to come on if, say, it comes down to a Strongsville or Amherst or Olmsted Falls. You never know with those teams. So if there's
Highland,
and some suburban league teams that are right on that bubble, maybe if we have some scenarios, we'll try to get him, to come back on. Maybe not for a half hour, maybe for just 15 minutes, and just go break those down real quick. But he has a lot of great info, and he loves doing it. So
I imagine his dance card gets a little bit more full as these next 2 weeks come on.
Yeah, he says it usually does, but a lot of times if you give him a little bit of time, moving forward, he can maybe schedule it in. But I know he gets pretty busy at this time of the season, so I'm glad we got a chance to talk to him. And The guy's almost a legend, I think, on Sports on Tap with the way we talk and use his site.
Well, I mean, if you're into high school football, and this is what, and even if you do this for fun, and if you get paid for it, and you have a resource is well reputable as Joe Itel, anytime you get a chance to get the man behind the information on, you got to take it. So we're very, very happy to have Mr. Idle on the air with us, and talk to someone who we've known about for quite a while, and we've when I was wrapping up school in 2001, even though we lost to Straunsville, that day we had an idea who we were playing. We didn't have to wait until Tuesday or even Sunday to figure that out. It was, unfortunately we saw it pop up. We weren't hosting the game. We had to go to McKinley and play in the Hall of Fame game, but that was all because we knew it because of his website. So it's great to meet him and talk to him.
Yeah, and it's cool that he's going back to 1970.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I can't wait to see that. Actually,
me neither. Like, to recreate old playoff races.
Oh, that would be awesome.
In between, and to see how all the points shook out back in the 70s and the 80s, and when they went from classes to divisions, and then when it went from 4 teams per region that made the playoffs to 8 teams that made the playoffs per region, and just see how close teams were. I mean, a one-loss team didn't make the playoffs in the early 90s because there's only 4 teams in a region that made the playoffs. So
it's going to be fun to see that. I can't wait till that comes out. And I'm glad he's sticking around for a while. And like you said, if not, I mean, he can have a partner with Eddie over here.
Pass down the calculator.
You can help him out.
I'll take it. I will gladly take that. I don't know if my wife will feel about that, but I'll be all right.
It's math.
Well, guys, it's math. And it's in week 8 is in the books.
It's definitely in the books.
But great job tonight. A lot of great information, and teams pushing these last 2 weeks to make the playoffs. It's going to be
division
grind.
And championships, league championships up in the air for almost all of our teams, really.
That's right.
All of our leagues. So gonna be interesting next couple weeks. So if you're out, we'll tweet out there. We'll be active as best we can these next 2 weeks and go from there. But good luck to all the players and all the cheerleaders and the bands and coaches and fellas. I'm just wasting time because I'm making Josh very angry. I'm letting him stew in his own anger because he hates when I drone on.
This is the equivalent of Sean talking about Notre Dame and or Detroit. Thank you very much, everybody. Good luck to your teams. We will see you on the other side.
For Dick, Sean Duffy, Josh Evie, I'm Rob Troutman. See ya. Ahead to look at. We've all been mispronouncing his name. I know. I told him that. I figured that out. Well, no.